All right, welcome back to SouFLoTV again, everybody. It is your host with the most. The most I can tell people, right, about prison is stay out of them. All your rights are violated once you go to prison. Prison is legal slavery. If you don't believe me, go look up the Constitution of the United States of America, where it says that prison slavery was abolished, except for if you're convicted of a crime and then housed in a prison. With that said, the Supreme Court has agreed on Monday to take up the case of a Rastafarian man who is seeking to sue prison officials in Louisiana who cut off his dreadlocks while he was incarcerated. God bless America. God bless America, because if it's in any other country, once you're inside those prison walls, they can pretty much do what they want to do to you, and you don't really have a course of action that you can take after. Definitely not suing anybody. They can cut your hair off. They can say it was for hygiene purposes. They can say that that is the rules of the prison where you must cut your hair off. But you know how the United States of America is. Everyone's right to practice their religious beliefs. And this Rastafarian man with his dreadlocks, this could very much seem as if they were denying him the right to practice his religious beliefs. So the case is now at the latest that involves religious rights to catch the High Court's attention, and it could have significant implications by allowing prisoners to sue the government officials for damages when their religious rights are burdened under a federal law that was enacted some 25 years ago. Daman Landor. This is a story that we covered before right here on SouFLoTV. This is just an update to the story. His plan was to sue them. His plan was to go to the highest courts in the land. Today, it says that the Supreme Court has agreed to take up his case, to hear him out. Daman Landor, a devout Rastafarian who began serving a 5-month prison sentence in 2020 for drug possession, had taken a religious vow years earlier to never cut his dreadlocks. That vow is called a Nazarene vow. And in the Bible, the scriptures, it says, "Let no blade come upon the corners or length of thy locks." So these guys don't cut their facial hairs. They don't even shape it up or anything like that. Their hairs grow on their face, their mustache, their beards, their dreadlocks. And it is a covenant between them and God that as long as life is in them, they will keep their hairs to remind them that they should not be of this world, but they should be in this world but not of it. So their look alone is supposed to separate them. And then, of course, you must live the rest of the scriptures, right? Right. So it is on this premise. He's a Rastafarian, and that's some of the beliefs pertaining to his hair. But his situation took a turn for the worst when, after arriving at a new prison weeks before his release, he handed officials a copy of an appeal court ruling from 2017 that allowed prisoners to have dreadlocks. The guards tossed that in the trash. They then handcuffed him to a chair and forcibly shaved his head. This brother came in with the paperwork, legal paperwork. He handed it to them. He said, "This is my defense." At the other facility I was at, they adhered to these and they allowed me to keep my hair. I'm just giving y'all this just in case you guys are not up on what the rules are. I don't want any problems. I got short time to serve. I'll be out of here in a minute. I'm not a violent offender. I'm just trying to do my little couple of months and go home intact in one piece. I think they purposely did that, strapped him down, handcuffed him to a chair, shaved his head for some kind of a humiliation ritual, especially knowing that it was connected to his faith, and his faith is based in something Afrocentric. So, following his release, he sued Louisiana prison officials and guards for damages under a decade-old law that protects the religious interests of inmates, no matter what religion you are. But the lower courts had dismissed the case, ruling that the law doesn't allow individuals to pursue damages against prison officials for alleged violations of it, even though, in one court's views, he had been the victim of a grave legal wrong. So, the conservative New Orleans-based 5th U.S. District Court of Appeals said in a unanimous decision last year that it emphatically condemned the treatment that Landor endured. But an earlier appeal court precedent settled the case against him. The full Fifth Circuit divided on whether to hear the case or not. Could you believe that? So you have even the government fighting over with each other over should we hear the case or not. I'm sure some of them were saying, let the little ninja go. It is what it is. The hair is gone already. But he has had people who are non-black from other religions, to include imams, Jewish leaders, who have come to his defense, stating that if it happened to him, it can definitely happen to everybody else. And they don't want it trickling down to them. So President Bill Clinton had actually signed the bipartisan law back in 2000, that's 25 years ago, that expects the religion, that protects, rather, the religion interests of state prisoners. But it's not clear whether that law allows people who were harmed to sue for money damages. I'm sure it does. Because if a law is written in place and you violate the law, obviously you can be sued. The Supreme Court ruled in 2020 that a similar law with nearly identical language allows people whose religious rights have been burdened to seek damages against the government officials acting in their individual capacity. So without a damages remedy, lawyers for Landor told the justices in court papers that inmates will often be left without meaningful protection for their religious exercise. In other words, then, once Landor's head was shaved, the only way for him to have some legal remedy is through monetary damages. You can't put his hair back on his head. So the next best thing to do is to compensate him financially. The no damages rule ensures that respondent officials would not be held accountable for violating the religious rights of a prisoner set for release in just 3 weeks, and prevented him from obtaining any relief for the abuse that he suffered, his attorney has said. So attorneys for the Louisiana state officials urged the courts to not take up the case, arguing, among other things, that Landor could bring his claims under that law. They also told the justices that permitting the lawsuit to move forward would hamper the state's ability to hire staff in its prisons. That's crazy. That's super crazy, because they should be able to hire staff regardless. All staff has to remember is do not trample upon the inmates' religious rights. Therefore, do not strap them to a chair and shave their heads bald when they haven't had a haircut since they were a child. Landor ain't never had a haircut. They gave this man his first haircut. Siding with Landor, they told the courts, would almost certainly deepen the problem by dividing down staffing levels and dissuading job applicants. That's what they're concerned about. That in turn inevitably would lead to worse prison conditions and perhaps lessened protection for religious liberty, as understaffed prisoners attempt to survive the growing prison population. No one wins in this situation, is what they said. The Trump administration, meanwhile, had asked the justice to take up this case. Solicitor General D. John Sarr told the courts in May that the federal government has an interest in ensuring that prisoners or other institutions receiving federal funds do not substantially burden religious exercise, and damages liability is closely connected to that interest. In other words, under the Trump administration, they have said, we believe that he's been done grave wrong, and his case needs to be looked at. You know, not for nothing, on a personal level though, let me just say this. There's so many things that Donald Trump is doing that I just do not agree with, you know, but why does it have to be that the bad comes with the good? And then at the same time, it's up to us to say, hey, this, and this, those are bad. But this, and this, those are good. I definitely and absolutely believe that this man was violated. And I definitely and absolutely believe that his case should be heard at the Supreme Court level. And not only should it be heard, but if what he says transpired, which they have admitted to already, then he should definitely be compensated for what he has done. I don't know if you've ever grown dreadlocks before and became attached to your dreadlocks. To have somebody sit you in a chair forcibly, then handcuff you to the chair if you decide to protest that you do not want a haircut, and then not only to cut off your dreads, but to shave you like a sheep. Do you know how humiliating that is? How embarrassing that is? Psychologically, how painful that is, especially when your relationship with Almighty God is attached to those dreadlocks that are on your head. This is your covenant with God, that you will carry these for the rest of your life, your Nazarene vows. And you're shaved and then laughed at. Somebody has to pay. Somebody has to pay. And I hope when his case is heard at the highest level, that somebody does pay. Funny thing is, a lot of the times they will drag your case all the way to the highest level and have you feeling like you're about to win something, and then they'll let you down at the highest degree, where they'll finally throw the case out for good. Now, with all avenues exhausted, you will have nowhere else to go except for go home and cry about it. And I hope that's not what happens in this case. Leave your questions or your comments in the comment section below, and I'll get to each one of them as best as I can. And I'll see you on the next video. Shout out to all my Rastafarians out there, the ones that carry and the ones who don't. Don't forget, Morgan Heritage, Peter said, you don't have to dread to be Rasta. This is not a dreadlocks thing. Divine conception of the heart. That means that you don't have to carry dreadlocks on your head to be a Rasta. However, many Rastas carry their dreadlocks as a symbol of their commitment to the Most High. I'll catch you on the next video. It's SouFLoTV. I'm out. Peace.